And welcome back to yet another Buffalo Bills pregame. We're here as the Bills get ready to take on the Baltimore Ravens in the divisional round of the playoffs. A big victory against the Denver Broncos in the wild card. Dan, we'll start off with you. What do your biggest impressions for the Broncos game?
I think the offense came out and it seemed like they struggled a bit at first. I think there was some nerves maybe to start the game, both on offense and on defense. I think they were playing a little uptight, you know, um, not scoring on their first drive, or, no, they did score on the first drive. Defense looked a little tight, allowing that touchdown on the first drive, but I think they loosened up and they realized the team that they are and the talent that they have. And, that showed in the rest of the game, and especially with the final score. And I think upcoming against the Ravens, they're going to be playing fast and loose as well.
Yeah, that first drive, it was one big play, really, even that you negate that, it's a completely different game, in terms of them not even getting started offensively. Jared, what were your big takeaways from the Broncos game?
Oh, I was just thinking about the past, to be honest. I was just like, thank you so much, Broncos, for putting all your trust in Case Keenum and allowing us to take Josh Allen in 2018. That's basically what I was thinking.
Do you think they have
But no,
regrets?
Dan pretty much said it. I mean, like, the Broncos made a ton of mistakes. Like, they had more than three drops during the game, and I don't think they had done that all season. So, I mean, they just fell apart, and they just didn't look like they were even a playoff team. Honestly, they looked like the team that got in the seventh spot.
Do you think that Denver has some regrets taking Case Keenum?
Yes.
But Josh Allen would have looked ridiculous, Jared, in those orange pants, as tall as he is. Uh,
Yeah, I'm sure he's pretty happy about that.
Red, white, and blue is a much more classic look for sure. Uh, this week coming up against the Ravens, we have a very different matchup here in the playoffs as we did in week 4 in the regular season when these teams met last. Jared, what do you see as the biggest differences in this time around?
I mean, it's a completely different atmosphere than it was at the beginning of the season. Going into the Week 4 game, the Bills were 3-0. We're kind of waiting for that first loss. Whereas the Ravens were 1-2. They had lost to the Raiders at the beginning of the season, which knocked me out of my eliminator league, and they were just like, we need this win. Like, they would have been 1-3 after that game. So the win was way more important to the Ravens than it was to the Bills. So there's a momentum factor. There's also just injury factor. We didn't have Taron Johnson that game. We didn't have Matt Milano that game. We didn't have Terrell Bernard that game. Yeah, completely different situation. We're healthy now, and I think the other thing that the Bills did not prepare for is they didn't prepare for Derrick Henry. I think they stopped Lamar. Lamar only got 13 completions. Like that was their defensive plan, but they didn't really account for the other MVP on their team, which is Derrick Henry, and he got nearly 200 yards against the Bills. The Ravens were able to stop the Bills running. Like, that was the huge difference. We could not run the ball at all. So that's what I'm curious about this game, is whether or not the Bills are going to be able to run the ball against the Ravens this time.
The running game has consistently gotten better as the season goes on, so hopefully that won't be a huge problem for the Bills, especially in a cold weather game. The effective running game might help, which brings us to the breakdown. We'll start on the defensive side of the ball. Jared was just talking about Derrick Henry. Dan, do you think Derrick Henry will have another big game against Buffalo, or do you think we're better prepared this time around?
Yeah, so I think that the Ravens, when they added Derrick Henry this past offseason, you knew it was going to be a challenge because Lamar Jackson is already so explosive on the ground, especially with those RPOs and, as well as throwing the ball, with Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers. So it's really difficult to stop even without factoring for Derrick Henry. So they added him, and it seems like Lamar is having one of the best seasons of his career, and I think it definitely helps that they have Derrick Henry. So I expect them to run the ball just as much as they did the first time around. And I think if we can keep him at bay, I think you want to force Lamar to make those tough throws and make some plays with his arm instead of with his feet. So I definitely expect, the Ravens to run just as much as they did the first time. Difference being, like Jared mentioned, that we're having some of our star defensive players back in the lineup, so I think that's really going to help.
Josh, Jared, you're mentioning the importance of getting the running game going. Is that the most important thing for the offense this week?
Yeah, they have to establish the run this time. There needs to be some, so whether it's with James Cook or Ty Johnson or even Josh Allen if he has to do it himself. The other thing I failed to mention before was the other key difference was that MVS was still on the team in week 4. We didn't have Amari Cooper yet. So the fact that we went out and traded for the receiver, the Bills have been doing so much better since then. So I think that will ironically help with the running game because they have another defender, which is just better than MVS was for the Bills at least, that they have to take into account.
Very good. The weather looks like it's going to be cold, but cold enough where it won't be like a wintry mix. That it'll just be a straight snow. Baltimore, no stranger to snow themselves. Do you think either team is better or worse suited for the weather? Dan, will let you answer first.
I'm going to say that given how much they do run the ball and how much they use, that ground and pound game with Derrick Henry, I think the Ravens do benefit more with worse weather conditions. That being said, I think, like Jared mentioned, the running game has definitely improved. James Cook has been looking really good. And even the emergence of Ty Johnson has been really big as well. So, I think, especially with Josh Allen, the way he runs the ball, and I think later in the season, I think he seems like he's less worried about injuries just because, there's only possibly a couple games left. So I think given the fact that the Ravens have that ground and pound game, I think bad weather does favor them. But I think that, the Bills have shown ever since that divisional round loss to the Bengals in 2022, I think they've shown that they are able to play in cold weather and inclement weather as well.
One thing that really impressed me about the Bills' performance this time around was the yards after contact and the amount of players helping the ball runner like push them further down the field. And if that keeps up in bad weather, I see the Bills being very successful with the run game and taking advantage of slippery conditions. Next up, and right here at the end, we go to the picks. Jared, first, who do you have winning?
You're gonna hate me. I have Baltimore winning. I think the Bills have a really good chance, and it's not going to surprise me if the Bills pull this off. But I think Baltimore just, when you look at both teams, they just stack against the Bills just a little bit better in each category, maybe minus quarterback. So I have Baltimore winning this game 27-24.
Oof. All right, Dan, some good news.
Well, I was thinking earlier today, as someone who's going to the game on Sunday, I was thinking this might be the best Bills game I ever witnessed so far in my life, or it might be the worst game. I think it's going to be one or the other because I think this is in terms of NFL, I think this is one of the biggest games of the entire year, given how, Lamar and Josh have been kind of competing for MVP, and I think this is going to be a great game. That being said, I'll go with the Bills. I do think that Lamar's going to have to outpass Josh, and I think games in Buffalo. I think this is going to be a really loud stadium. I think Josh can get it done. So I'll go 28-24 Bills.
All right, phew. I was about to. If the majority of us pick against the Bills in the playoffs, we're going to lose our status as a homer pregame show. All right, I got the Bills winning as well, 30-27, and a great game. Dan, I hope it is the greatest Bills game you've ever been to. And now I'm thinking about what the greatest game I've ever been to. Maybe I'll come back with that next week because we will be back next week, no matter what, whether we're playing the Chiefs, the Texans, or for our season recap. So be sure to see you then. Thank you so much for another great season of Buffalo Bills pregame show. And woo, go Bills.